Moicano. Do you guys know Moicano? Moicano is one of the great interviews in the history of the UFC. And who would you give that to? Rampage, Conor, Chandler. Chandler's been setting the world on fire. Who would you give that to? O'Malley, sure. Who would you give it to? There's a guy named Moicano. He's one of them. And Moicano cuts this interview and he starts speaking in the third person. He starts talking about Moicano wants fights. Moicano wants money. Hey, Dana Hunter, give Moicano a bonus. Moicano needs money. And then somewhere Moicano needed fights, but he needed steaks. He needed a steak. He needed a steak. He was hungry. I think it was that he was called on short notice. And he had to cut weight and he was having a beer and a steak. I mean, this is like a year and a half ago. But Moicano was a flat-out stud. So Moicano does an interview yesterday. He's training the American top team in Florida, right? The hub, the American top team. And he says Masvidal's in there every day. But now you got my interest. First off, why is Moicano cutting a promo on Masvidal? They're the same weight class. They're teammates. Maybe there's nothing to see here. Maybe that's his teammate and friend, and the reporter used Moicano to get to Masvidal because they couldn't get the interview with Masvidal. It's a typical move. I'm not doing something dissimilar right now. I'm telling you about Moicano because it's what I got to steer you in to Jorge Masvidal. But guess what Moicano said? I did like it because he said, man, I see him in there every day. I can't even tell you how hard that is to do. To go into the gym if you are a professional fighter making a living. To get into the gym every day, it's a very hard thing to do. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline, and very few guys do it. And I know guys, including world champions, they just couldn't do it unless they had a contract. The late, great Evan Tanner, my teammate, and I mean this in a very sweet way as a way of remembering Evan, worked his ass up, but he would not come in the gym. And I mean, he would not set foot in that gym if he did not have a signed bout agreement. I hear that about Luke Rockhold, one of my favorite 85-pounders ever. I heard what a workhorse he was, but he needed to have that fight coming. It's a very normal thing. It's hard. It's what makes guys retire. 90+% of athletes who retire from this sport retire because they don't want to make weight anymore. You didn't know that. I just shared something with you. You've, in fact, never heard anybody say that ever. That is the number one reason that athletes retire. Darn near every athlete that you've ever seen, if they said, hey, I'm retiring, I'm done, and then they were given the option, hey, we'll give you more, we're going to move you up a weight class, would have stuck around. Now, the number two thing that makes them retire is the lifestyle. It's the work. That's it. And the greatest wrestler ever is a guy named John Smith. John Wesley Smith, residing out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, retired from wrestling. I said, hey, look, you can still make the team. You're still the guy. He said, I'm not worried about making the team. I don't want to do the work that it would take to win the gold. So what do you mean by that? So I'm not interested in making teams. I'm going to make the team. I'm going to win the world championship. I'm going to win the Olympic Games. I'm not interested in doing that level of training. I've done it 6 times. I'm out. And nobody had ever said that before, but nobody had ever had his level of success. So it's a very fascinating thing. Hear from a young man at Adel City, Oklahoma, who at 28 years old had 2 Olympic gold medals and a head coaching position of the greatest dynasty in wrestling ever, Oklahoma State. It was a fascinating thing, but nobody had ever had that level of success. Right, there's a fine line in genius and insanity. It was a really interesting claim. He made this claim in 1992. I was a freshman in high school, and I still remember it. So, the fact that Jorge Masvidal doesn't have a bout agreement at all, and Moicano says he sees him at the gym every day, that's an interesting thing. And Moicano went even further and said the part of the gym that George resides in is the boxing part exclusively. And then Moicano went even further to break down the workouts that he had seen George do. Every day on the heavy bag, every day on the rope, every day on the shadow box, every day doing some mitts. Didn't seem sparring, according to the interview. And I thought that was very telling, right? Like, if there's anybody whose retirement was insincere, it was George Masvidal. I mean, as he was saying it, he didn't mean it. And that's a different guy. It wasn't about the money. At some point, he needed some money. He got the wife, he's got the kids. But it wasn't about the money with him. This is what he did. And it was just a wildly interesting spot. Because one fight that would work, but they blew it because they used their relationship for promotion, is the Paul fight. Like George Masvidal and Paul, that would be two very big guys. And I don't know that it would be as big now, and I don't know that you could do it at all without some kind of made-up mischief. They like trained together and they were buddies and they did some promos and, they were cool, as the kids say. But another one, I mean, it's sitting on the table, I'm talking about 7 figures, is Mike Perry. And I want it to be Mike Perry. Mike Perry called George Masvidal out. Period. The end. Called him out for the whole world to hear, then doubled down at the press conference in 3 different media outlets, and he never got a response. Now, George doesn't have to respond. You go around being a badass your whole life. At some point, you can say, I'm out of the badass business. It's your time, and go ahead and run with it. And if you want to use my name, more power to you. I mean, right? That's the way that it goes. You use somebody else's at some point. It's the way that it goes. But that isn't exactly what happened, is it? George didn't respond. George didn't say, yeah. George did 3 weeks later say, I'm no longer retired. And if you get called out and you don't respond and you say, I'm no longer retired, I mean, there's some languages where you just accepted the fight. Precisely what it means. You have your own teammate, Moicano, say, man, this guy hasn't missed a practice and he's exclusively on the boxing gym. Now we're using circumstantial evidence, and that's, you got to start somewhere, right? Some guys come in, they're just on the treadmill or doing something like this. So it's not a guarantee of anything, but let's rework this real fast. He's not fighting in the UFC. He's not going to fight in his own promotion. I don't think. He got called out 3 weeks ago, and the first time he spoke, he said, I'm not retired anymore. It would depend who you asked. You need a jury, you need a judge, but a jury of one and the judge of yours truly. George Masvidal just accepted Mike Perry's call out.